Oh, look, it sneezed. There's engine parts everywhere. Anyways, welcome to AllieCat Customs, and today I did an autopsy on this old Camper 454, and I found some carnage. So y'all come on along and see what we found. Well, here we are, ready to do an autopsy on this old wounded 454. So we're about to dive in on it. First, we need to drain out all the fluids. The oil in the filter should give us our first clue as to what happened. Alrighty. Now I got everything set up. Go ahead and break this loose. See if there's any oil in there, or if it is oil. See what happens. See what comes out. Well, it doesn't look like milkshake. This looks like very not really even seeing. Not really even seeing any metal shavings in it. So it's not milkshake, and it's not a, wasn't water coming out first, so it doesn't look like water was ingested. So that's promising. And of course, because I dented the can, it didn't want to come out very easy. But what do we have here? Oh man, yep. It's definitely sparkly. I mean, it's not terrible. There's just some debris, some sparkles, but it's enough to confirm. Yep. Well, I guess it was a good run. The old Camper 454, it had a valiant effort, but it definitely didn't like my size 15 double E clodhoppers beating on it. And probably didn't like the nitrous so well either. It doesn't look too terribly bad, but there is some metal shavings in the oil. So we'll get it taken apart. We'll go ahead and pull the engine out of it, and we'll put it on a stand and take it apart. See what we found. It might be a Mini, but it was still in the way of the headers. Yes, I know that pulling transmission isn't exactly part of doing the engine autopsy, but I figured since the engine was down, since I get the engine out, might as well pull the transmission out. I got a few upgrades to do to it, and I want to see what it looks like on the inside after about 4 years of hard abuse with a trans brake. So it'll be fun to get this thing apart. But for right now, I'm gonna push it off to the side and get the engine pulled out. The good thing is I'm not leaving the torque converter attached to the flex plate because the engine spun over, which is another promising thing. So on to the next step. Man, that was fun. Now that we got this engine out, it's time to pull it apart and inspect the damage. First, For y'all that don't remember, I'm gonna give y'all a rundown on what this engine is. This is a 454 from a camper. I bought this engine in October 2019, and the guy I bought it from, he actually ripped it out of the motorhome using a torch with a little help from his son's heavy haul wrecker, or a heavy truck wrecker, 18-wheeler style wrecker. And so my plan was to do a full rebuild on it, but in March of 2020, my 396 got hurt. So I was in a crunch and I had to have an engine to get the truck back on the track. So I snatched the 396 out and I started to build this 454. I left the bottom end completely stock. I installed a small solid lift flat tappet cam and a set of Edelbrock Performer heads on it. And I topped it off with the intake and the carburetor and the headers from my 396. That combo made 8-to-1 compression, and it put about 340 horsepower to the tire, but at least it sounded mean. I proceeded to beat on this 454 mercilessly for the next year or so, and I even hit it with 100 shot and 150 shot of nitrous every chance I got, pretty much. As far as my doing cruising, I went cruising the coast and drag raced anything that moved, and I did every burnout I could possibly do on the street the whole time. And well, sometime between making its fastest pass ever in June of 2021 and going from that to taking a cruise down the street in October 21, it decided it was done with all the madness and started to eat itself. So that brings us to here. Now, I have not pulled a plug, valve cover, or anything. I've refused to guess as to what's happened to the engine, but I have my suspicions as to what happened. The last night I raced this truck, the battery was shot, and I should have parked it, but because of my die-trying attitude, I decided to run it anyways. I was running 150 shot of nitrous, and the last pass I made, the truck died at the finish line. I made 2 passes that night, and I could tell from the time slip that the truck was faster to the 60 foot and to the 330 foot, but it slowed down on the 660 on its last pass, which is a bit concerning. I think the engine hurt itself in the last pass and the dead battery covered it up. Now, if that's the case, then it either hurt itself because it's a stock bottom end 454 and it got tired of my size 15 double E boot beating on it and smacking with giggle gas every chance I got, or because the battery was shot, it lost fuel pressure, and well, bad things tend to happen with you're on the giggle gas with no fuel. At any rate, we won't know until we open it up and investigate. All right, so our first step is to snatch these valve covers off and see what we find under here. That'd be our first clue as to what kind of damage we may find under here. So I'm gonna get both valve covers off after I clean some of this dirt off the top of the motor because it's pretty nasty. Safety squints. Alrighty, moment of truth. Nothing obviously looks bad. Valve cover looks clean and brand new under here. That's interesting. Let's see. Alrighty. Let's see. Everything looks clean over here too. Man, ain't that interesting. All right, so I'm not finding anything really wrong with the top end of my motor. On initial inspection, pulled the valve covers off and all the rocker arms are in place, facing the right direction, and there's just a little bit of slack on the ones that are on the base circle, but this is a solid lift cam, so that's kind of how they're supposed to be. When it's on the base circle, it's got slack in it. So that's not a big problem. I don't see any obvious damage. I don't see my rocker arms don't look hurt. push rods don't seem bent. So everything looks good on the top end on both sides. So I'm about to snatch my intake off and keep searching, see if I can find the culprit somewhere. Who knows? Well, the mystery continues. I had one lifter that sort of kind of felt a little funny when I pulled it out, but even the underside of it looks great. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, and it would have probably ran just fine as it was. I'm not going to run this flat tappet cam just because flat tappet cams are a gamble at the beginning, and I this survived until the rest of the motor got hurt. So I'm not going to try it again. Still ain't found it. See if I can Sherlock Holmes it, go to the bottom side and see if I can find something. I know it lost oil pressure, and I know it made noise, and I know it was way down on power. So maybe it's in the bottom end. So far I'm not seeing nothing on the top end for the cam or nothing. And I don't know, pull the front of the motor off, get the cam out, and if the cam looks good, then roll it over and pull the pan. It's always something. All right, so I got the whole top end of the motor taken off, and I ain't found any damage. The heads look great. The head gaskets look great. As far as I can see inside the cylinder walls, they all look great. So about to roll it over and see if we can find any damage on the rotating assembly. So about to spin it over now. That's not supposed to happen. Well, there's something inside my oil pan that is definitely unhappy. All right then. That's interesting. All right, so I got the bolts loose. I did loosen the front half of the bolts so I could get the timing chain cover off. As I was rolling over, I heard noise, and definitely shouldn't be anything inside the bottom end that moves when the engine spins over. So, about to pull the pan off and see what we got. The culprit is definitely the oil pump pickup. So, yeah, that explains why my oil pressure was falling. And this oil pump pickup has a bracket that goes from here to here. When it is in place right here, and it actually broke off the bracket that bolts to the oil pump. At some point, it broke off and this thing worked itself loose and came out. That is unbelievable. Well, I guess that's what you get for having a cheap oil pan. That bracket, the oil pump pickup popped off because the bracket broke that holds it to the oil pump here, and that was rattling around in the bottom of the oil pan. So when that happened, I'm not sure, but that's definitely the reason why there's metal shavings in the bottom end of the engine, and it gets pulling apart. Hopefully, I don't know, the engine looks so clean, it seems that it must have happened soon. I still don't understand why the engine was running rough, cleaned up, and then while driving, the oil pressure started fluttering. I mean, I haven't seen any indication why it would be running rough, and this, it's like it's two separate problems, and it all comes into this. So we start taking loose and see if I can find any rod bearings or mains that are spun. See if I can find some more damage. I'm speechless. I figured with the bolt-on bracket, that thing would have at least been somewhat reliable, but I already had a problem with the oil pan, so go figure. The joys of hot rodding. Man, I don't even know what to think. Part of me feels dejected that the engine hurt itself over something as stupid as losing the oil pump pickup tube and ruin the bottom end of this engine. You know, I knew that this being a Camper 454, a stock bottom end, that it was on borrowed time to begin with. I thought it would be more of a spectacular come apart session than this, but at any rate, it's still dead, and it's dead for a dumb reason. But I also feel vindicated because as taking the top part of the engine apart, I thought this engine was in a lot better shape than it was. And now we know why, because with the oil pump not being able to pump any oil, it can't send the bad metal shavings and everything from the bottom end of the engine through the oil filter or through the top of the engine. So yes, the oil filter had some metal shavings in it, but not enough to justify the amount of carnage I saw on the bottom of this engine. So that was interesting. But yeah, I had multiple rods, spin rod bearings, and some of them spun pretty bad, but it wasn't bad enough to even make the rods rattle by hand. You know, so they spun and they ate them up pretty bad, but even by hand shaking it, I couldn't make them move. So that's why it wasn't a hard knocking sound when we was checking the engine out. That's why it just sounded like a light rattle, because it was trying to come apart and it hadn't come apart yet. So that's that part. The mains look good though. The main bearings took most of the damage. Doesn't look like none of the mains spun, which is a great thing. So the block seems to be in pretty good shape. I'm gonna finish checking this block out. Man, you know, this engine was a lot of fun, and there's something stupid like a cheaply made oil pump pickup tube killed it. But you know, after seeing the damage of this 454, I'm really curious what my spare 454 I have looks like. So I'm going to drag it in here and blow it apart and see if I can make a good engine from these two. This is only going to get more exciting. So if you enjoy the carnage, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you subscribe so you can keep up with all the adventures as I try to get this old beater back together. Hopefully soon I can have this truck back ready to race and back ready to cruise. And if I do, then you can see it right here at AllieCat Customs.